Long before colonial borders were drawn, long before modern states rose and fell, the San people, often called the Bushmen, lived across southern Africa as hunter gatherers. They are among the oldest living cultures on Earth. Genetic studies even suggest that their lineage goes back tens of thousands of years, possibly to the very cradle of humanity itself. You are listening to History Here and Now with your host. It's me, Sebastian Burgers. The San's deep knowledge of nature allowed them to thrive in harsh desert environments like the Kalahari. They could track an animal over days, read the land like a book, and use plants for both food and medicine. Their languages, rich with consonants, reflect a complex oral tradition that connects generations. But today, the San are not known for what they've preserved. They are known for what they've lost. Their story is often filtered through outside narratives, anthropological fascination, conservationist pity, or even economic disregard. While the term indigenous is widely used to describe them, in the San context, it can obscure more than it reveals. Their struggle isn't only about identity, it's about land. And more specifically, it's about the violent disposition of that land in both colonial and post colonial areas. It's about land, and more specifically, it's about the violent disposition of that land in both colonial and post colonial eras. In a state like Botswana, the conversation isn't just about culture, it's about control over territory, resources, and survival. When European colonists arrived in southern Africa, they didn't just bring guns and cattle, they brought a new worldview, one rooted in land ownership, extraction, and profit. For the San, who had no concept of private property in the European sense, this marked the beginning of a profound loss. They were pushed out of fertile territories, accused of theft, and targeted in armed conflicts. Entire communities were wiped out by violence, while others fell victim to diseases introduced by outsiders, diseases they had no immunity to. Over time, colonial powers imposed legal systems that criminalized the San way of life. Their hunting was deemed illegal, their movement was restricted, what was once vast, open landscape became fenced reserves, not for the San, but for the wildlife, tourism, and increasingly extractive industries. In modern Botswana, this legacy of disposition continues. Despite the country's international reputation as a stable democracy, the San still remaining among the most marginalized. Their ancestral lands have been carved up for diamond mining, fracking, and trophy hunting, activities that enrich elites while denying the San access to basic human subsistence. Even as the San were told their hunting threatened conservation, rich tourists were allowed to hunt big game on private ranches. Even as their homes were declared illegal, corporations were granted licenses to drill into the very same earth. It's not just hypocrisy, it's structural inequality, engineered through laws, policies, and silence. In the 21st century, the San face a new set of obstacles, not from colonial powers, but from the modern state itself. Botswana's government has championed conservation and development, but often at the direct expense of indigenous communities. In the Central Kalahari Game Reserve, for example, the San were evicted under the pretext of wildlife protection. Traditional hunting was banned. Communities were forcibly relocated, often to settlements with no proper water, healthcare, or education. And yet, inside that same reserve, the Gope mine, now known as the Gahgu mine, I don't know how to say that, I'm sorry, was opened by multinational interests. It spans over 760 square kilometers of San ancestral territory. Elsewhere, fracking and copper mining continue to expand. Companies like Sandfire Resources operate in areas heavily populated by San communities, extracting vast wealth while local people struggle for access to clean drinking water. Boreholes drilled for industry are prioritized over basic human needs. The San weren't consulted, they weren't compensated, they weren't even informed. In 2019, Botswana's land policy granted zero land tenure rights to San individuals and communities, a deliberate, a deliberate erasure of their claims. What's more, these same communities suffer from a lack of political representation. While Botswana's dominant Tswana ethnic group holds most positions of power, the San are nearly invisible to the government. This isn't simply neglect, it's structural exclusion. The San aren't just being ignored, they're being deliberately written out of the nation's development narrative. Despite everything, the San continue to resist. Their resilience isn't always loud, but it is constant. In 2019, the Kwe San community near Karang was finally granted the right to relocate to Sorosha, a site they identified as ancestral land. The government provided housing and infrastructure, and the community supported the move. It's a small but significant victory. That same year, negotiations between San representatives and President Masisi's administration signaled a new, though fragile, willingness to engage. But broader systemic change remains elusive. Looking beyond Botswana, the San story shares deep parallels with that of indigenous communities in Canada. Like the San, Canada's First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people were colonized by Europeans. Their children were taken to residential schools, their lands were expropriated, their cultures were labeled primitive. Yet, in Canada today, Indigenous communities have won hard-fought victories, from land settlements to political representation and formal apologies. They are far from achieving justice, but they have organizations, legal protections, and a voice in national conversations. The San have few of these tools. Their political networks are limited, and legal recognition remains weak, and their portrayal in media, when they are portrayed at all, still hinges on outdated stereotypes. The question then is not whether the San deserve rights, it's whether the world and the government of Botswana is willing to recognize those rights and act on them. The San are not a relic of the past. They are a living people carrying ancient knowledge into a modern world that rarely values it. Their struggle isn't just local, it's global. It's a fight for dignity, autonomy, and the simple right to live on their land by their customs with their future in their hands. The San do not need to be saved. They need to be heard. And that is the end of this episode for today. If you enjoyed, follow me on Spotify and Apple Music to get notified when another episode comes out. Stay tuned. Have a nice day. And I hopefully will see you guys next time.